Hello again, it's Mr. Don. We're going to be talking watercolor again. This is part three. And in part three, we're going to be talking about one of the most basic techniques in watercolor, and that is the wash. There's a couple different types of washes. Um, and we're going to learn that today. You're going to watch me do a wash, and you're going to watch one of the techniques to do some a special effect, to make clouds, per se, in on a blue field after you've washed in. A wash covers big areas, and part of the technique needs to be perfect. It can't have lines. You can't see streaks. You've got to have it's got to look good, and it's going to be critical to how well your painting is. Almost everybody does washes. And I'm going to show you, there's a picture coming up that's going to show you John Singer Sargent's he did a painting of some sheets online, and he used washes, and you can see along the bottom where the water pooled for those washes. There's little dark blue lines there where he's put in the shadows. The shadows of all these sheets were washes. Sorry about that. I gotta not use my arms to flail while I'm making videos. But anyway, so you have, it's going to be some technique there. You're going to use a big brush. There's a dry wash, which doesn't use any water, just the watercolor paint itself. And then there's another wash where you actually wet the paper first and then lay the watercolor into it. And it has all kinds of different techniques. This is something you need to experiment on. If you want to learn this, you've got to do it. I can tell you how to do it, tell you what to do, but you've got to do it. If you don't do it, then it's not going to be the same. So check out on the tutorials page. We're looking at part 3, and this is washes. Part 4 will be coming up shortly afterwards. So let's get to it, and I'll see you soon. Example of the most common watercolor technique, and that is a wash. There are two types of washes, dry washes and wet washes, and I'm going to show you a wet wash. I've taken my palette and I have placed my paint right here in one of my wells. Some of my wells are empty, but I'm not going to go crazy and putting it all in there right now. But I'm going to do an ultramarine, imagine I'm going to be painting like a sky. So I'm going to I'm going to use the ultramarine paint that's in there. That paint will harden, and I'll be able to use it over and over and over again until it eventually runs out. But it'll be hard and like these paints are, and I can just keep using it over. It becomes almost like a cake watercolor. The thing that's important to understand about watercolor, why is watercolor so hard and why is it so different, is that there's no white in watercolor. If I want a white color or a lighter color, I'm going to put less color on the paper. The paper is my white. So I'm going to start off by doing a dry wash. I have two. When you're doing washes, it's best to have bigger brushes. So I'm going to use this brush for the dry wash, this brush for the wet wash. It doesn't matter. I could have used either one. So I'm going to start off with the dry wash first. And I'm going to take some paint. Got to get a lot of water in here, and get my paint going. And I want to lay the color on in a uniform way and just lay it on. Now this is a dry wash. The paper is dried. It's not dry, and I'm just washing my color down. And now it's pooling, so I can dip into the pool. So I have a nice even wash, uniform wash of color here. Now, personally, I don't like to do it this way, and it looks like there's something on my paper. This is probably, I don't know what's going on with the paper, but that was my sky. That's a decent start to it, I guess. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a wet wash, and I'm going to wet the paper first. And I'm just putting on a wash of water here. Don't want too much, so I want to get that off. And you'll see how it doesn't want, you want to make it wet, you don't want to drown it like I just did. So I'm taking some of the water off, but the paint is now wet. The paper is wet rather, and I'm going to lay in my wash. And again, I'm just keeping this simple, and I'm going to lay in my wash. Now this is a wet wash. Probably have a little bit too much paint here, but and don't be afraid to tilt the canvas. But as you can see, the paint is running, and it didn't run with the last on the left side, but it is running now. And again, notice there's a slightly different effect here. You can see the different effect the way it's coming out. This will take time to dry, and you need to pull up some of this water. But it's basically that's incredibly simple. Now, if I wanted to, I have a few more options with the wet technique. If I wanted to add clouds, if this was my sky, and I want to put some white clouds in there, I don't have white paint. So how do I make white clouds? So I take, I'm taking a piece of paper towel here, but you can usually it's best to use tissue paper. But so now I can take this and I can roll this and take up some of the paper. Takes up some of the paint with the paper, and this is what I get. I can get a, I start making a cloudy appearance there, light clouds, and I can go back in, I can make the sky bluer later on, I can do a lot of different things. It's a very painstaking process, and if you're accustomed to other types of painting and you're used to the layering, this is going to be a very layered type thing, because you're going to use watercolor layers as glazes in an oil painting. You put an ultramarine glaze over a green, it makes a nice dark rich color. But you're going to do the same exact thing with this. You're going to put, when this dries, and you can use a hair dryer to dry this, but when this dries, you can lay a light red over this, or a light some other color, and you'll get a much more richer effect than just the plain old blue on the piece of paper. And this is coming out, there's a purple, ultramarine has a slight purplish tinge to it, and it's coming out a little purple. But you can see the different things you can do, but this allows a lot of different things. Now, if I wanted clouds here, I don't have, this is drying up already. I have, there's no way I'm going to be able to sop this up with the dry wash as I did with the wet wash. So this is something to think about when you're doing these things. And again, this is part of the process of learning watercolor, because you have to understand that the paper is now basically your white. So we're going to conclude with that, and again, stay tuned for the next one.